There exists a population of adults who never learned another way, whose bodies absorbed and endured the pain of another and understood it as safety. Nervous systems that learned volume equals authority. Fear equals compliance. And control equals safety. So when they're stressed, their body reaches for the only language it knows. That doesn't make us monsters. But now let's narrow this further. Many of these adults are parents. Parents living every day with immense guilt, isolating shame, and hopelessness about their parenting, their past, and their healing. And that's hard. Unprocessed shame isn't what makes anger abusive. It does make anger volatile and misdirected. But when shame is ungrieved, anger can turn inward, leading to collapse or withdrawal. Or it can turn outward, showing up as reactivity, yelling, or control. In parenting, this often looks like over-identifying with the child's behavior, or feeling exposed, disrespected, or even bad. It can look like reacting from threat instead of leadership. This is where dysregulated parenting begins. Dysregulated parenting is when a parent's nervous system becomes overwhelmed and temporarily takes the lead in behavior. This can show up as yelling, snapping, shutting down, or acting harshly in ways that aren't aligned with the parent's values, intentions, or long-term goals. In dysregulated parenting, the parent is reacting and not choosing. The behavior is driven by stress, overload, or unhealed patterns. Harm or fear may occur even if it's not intended. And importantly, the parent is capable of recognizing impact, taking responsibility, and repairing. The defining feature is not the behavior alone, but what happens next. Dysregulated parenting does not equal abuse. If abuse was defined solely as a child was scared, a voice was raised, or a nervous system shut down, then every human parent on earth would meet the clinical definition of an abuser, including parents during emergencies, parents with postpartum depression, parents under acute stress, parents learning regulation for the first time. That definition collapses the category so fully that it becomes unusable for protection, intervention, or change. So psychology, child development, and safeguarding require additional criteria, not to excuse harm, but to distinguish dangerous systems from dysregulated humans who are repairing. Here's the structural difference. Abuse is harm that is justified, defended, normalized, or repeated in the service of maintaining power. Dysregulation is harm that is recognized as harm and worked against. The same action can exist in two completely different moral structures. For example, a parent yells once, feels immediate remorse, repairs, and seeks tools. Power is relinquished. Or a parent yells repeatedly, minimizes impact, blames the child, and resists change. Power is preserved. The nervous system impact may initially feel similar, but the trajectory is not. In dysregulated parenting, anger shows up late, not early. In regulated systems, anger appears as irritation, firmness, boundary setting, a sense that something needs to change. In dysregulated parenting, anger appears after as exhaustion, overstimulation, repeated self-silencing, unmet needs, and accumulated resentment or shame. So anger isn't guiding here, it's overflowing. But here's the thing. Anger doesn't start as yelling. It starts as irritation. It starts as discomfort, tightness, the sense that something is off. If irritation is listened to early, anger stays protective instead of explosive. The angry one arrives after capacity has already been exceeded. That's why it feels sudden and confusing to both the parent and the child. The key thing here is, don't let your guilt suppress your boundaries as a parent. I'll say it again. Don't let your guilt suppress your boundaries as a parent. Anger here is about capacity, not entitlement. In dysregulated parenting, anger is fused with panic, like, I can't handle this, or shame, like, I'm failing. It's infused with fear of losing control, sensory overload, or a collapsing nervous system driven by survival mode. They're thinking, often unconsciously, I'm about to break. That doesn't make the behavior okay, but it locates the problem in capacity, not power. Here's the sad and uncomfortable truth. Even when anger isn't abusive in intent, a child's nervous system doesn't distinguish between anger from overwhelm and anger from dominance. To a child, raised voice equals threat, either way. So the impact still matters. That's why repair is non-negotiable. But the origin of the anger tells us what needs support, whether it be more regulation skills, more capacity, more rest, fewer unmet needs, or earlier listening to anger's signal. Anger becomes dangerous in dysregulated parenting when it's consistently ignored until explosion, when it's followed by shame instead of repair, when accountability is avoided through collapse, when the child becomes the regulator. This can look like good behavior so you don't explode. At that point, anger is no longer protective. It begins to train fear, even unintentionally. That's the warning zone. Your parenting may be dysregulated, but it is repairable. Repair occurs when the parent notices the impact, names the mistake, takes responsibility without blaming the child, actively learns new tools, and the child experiences repair and safety afterwards. Your progress can be tracked in your patterns. Look at whether it gets easier over time. Are you repairing faster? Are you learning new responses? That's how you can identify where you are in your progress. But understand this. Repair doesn't require a child to feel better quickly. It requires the adult to stay accountable, even if the child needs time. I have to take a moment and state a necessary boundary. If the language of dysregulation is used to avoid accountability, if it's used to pressure a child to forgive or delay meaningful change, this behavior has crossed into abuse. If you're noticing your patterns, feeling remorse, seeking tools, and repairing with your child, you're modeling for your child what healing looks like in real life. Your child is learning and acquiring the necessary tools from you that they may eventually need for their own healing journey. This is what healing while parenting looks like. Guilt that leads to repair is conscious. Guilt that leads to shame and paralysis isn't helpful. Children don't need perfect parents. They need present, accountable, and growing ones. Repair teaches safety more than perfection ever could. But remember this: repair is not something you demand from a child. It's something you demonstrate over time. In closing, I'd like to invite you to explore the environment of the angry one, perhaps even meet the angry one. I invite you to explore these questions. Number 1, what is my anger protecting when it shows up with my child? Is it protecting capacity, boundaries, rest, respect, safety, support? Instead of asking why you're angry, ask what feels threatened or exceeded in this moment, and what do I need this very moment? Number 2, what did I learn about anger growing up? And how does it translate with my family today? Whose anger was allowed and whose wasn't? Who could be loud? Who had to stay quiet? And what happened when you were angry as a child? Notice whether anger meant danger or power, whether irritation was listened to or punished, whether you learned to swallow anger or fear it. And how does that look like today in your family environment? Is it identical? Has it changed? Where is it the same? And what happens in your body just before you lose regulation? Do you get really hot? Does your jaw tighten, or is your breathing shallow? Do your thoughts start to race? Are you feeling numb? Track the earliest signals, not the explosion. And try to track where irritation starts in your body. And lastly, when you feel shame after reacting, do you move toward repair or collapse into self-punishment? Try to explore what helps you stay present after you made the mistake. What pulls you away from accountability? How does your child change when you're dysregulated? And how do they change when you repair? Notice their patterns. Do they get quieter? Are they more compliant? Are they more anxious? Are they more relaxed after repair? And what would it look like to listen to your anger at the irritation stage? What does it feel like before the breaking point? Ask yourself, what is a boundary you can set earlier? And what support do you need before escalation? If you were to listen to your irritation, what would it prevent? The goal isn't to get rid of anger. The goal is to hear it early enough to protect the relationship.